That's why more and more Lagosians are tuning in.
500,000 Lagosians.
720,000.
970,000.
Over 1 million Lagosians, they know that if you give me your afternoon, I will give you hard facts.
Well done, Sandra, on all you do, going beyond the headlines and focusing on the facts.
I am Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts.
Hello, Lagos. Good afternoon. I am Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts. First hard fact of the day: 35 new COVID confirmations yesterday. 14 of those are from Lagos. Continue to take your precautions. We've still got COVID out there. Wear a mask whenever you are out and about or when you're around people. Make sure that you try. Do your best. Try. Keep your distance. Wash your hands. Sanitize as often as possible. Protect yourself. Protect the people that you care about. Second hard fact of the day: President Buhari has finally signed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law. I wish I had my shikari thing so I can do some shikari, do some pomp and pageantry, because the president has finally done what he should have done a long time ago. After all the agitation, including a protest at Unity Fountain, the Nigerian people seem to finally have pushed the presidency to action. Because remember that at first there was no word from the presidency, and then the presidency said nobody should make noise until March 1st, and then it was he may sign any hour or any day, and then it was he will sign on Friday. Well, Friday came, Nigerians held Aso Rock to their word, and now we have an amendment. So yay, woo, woo, woo. The president did ask the National Assembly to remove one clause which bars political appointees like ministers from being party delegates at conventions. He believes that clause is unconstitutional. So there's that. But congratulations, Nigerians. At least we're going into fresh elections with a new law. We've got a third hard fact of the day. It's 10 days. Can you believe it? 10 days until the return of I Beg to Differ.
Good day, honorable judges, my moderator, timekeeper, and my fellow co-debater. My name is Samri Takashik. I'm 13 years old.
The auditions are over. Now it's time to debate.
The whole concept of democracy is a comment hearing
The I Beg to Differ debate tournament returns to your radio on Monday, March 7th.
I strongly concur that the barbaric and outdated
16 secondary school students made the cut.
For example, if you look at Cameroon,
Sandra Ezekwesili, my panel of judges, and my great debaters, Mondays to Thursdays, live at 4 p.m. on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And catch the replay the next day from 4 p.m. on Wazobia Max TV, showing on DSTV Go TV, Star Times, and on UHF Channel 57.
This tournament is brought to you in partnership with Paystack, supported by Printivo.
Thank you again to our partners for joining us on this journey. Now, the tournament itself will start on Monday, March 7th, but next Wednesday, we will have live debates here on Hard Facts. 4 debaters will compete for the last 2 spots in the I Beg to Differ tournament itself. It's the playoffs right here next Wednesday from 4 to 5. Don't miss it. We've sent out emails to the finalists. We've sent out emails to the playoff gang. So please have your kids check their emails, or you check it on their behalf and you get them ready for this. Well, we've got a great show lined up for you as always. Don't forget, if something is happening in your part of Lagos and you think it's newsworthy, give us a call on 01465 7175. 1 million Lagosians cannot be wrong. So if you think it's news, it's probably news. Thank you for listening to Hard Facts. On today's Big 3 Global Edition, where it's actually a big one, let's talk about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. At 4 o'clock, Agogo will be here with Public Square. After that, Music and Moments with Ifeanyi and Sam will take the air. Expect news, expect business, expect sports at the top of the hour every hour. But let's get started with today's big one, Russian-Ukraine War Edition. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, and these are your hard facts.
The Big Three Global Edition on Hard Facts.
What are Putin's actual motives for invading Ukraine? How will the international community respond? And are nuclear powers uncheckable? It's a question I've been asking myself for a few days now, and it's a question I'm hoping that my guests answer for me. Like I said, it's the big one, Russia-Ukraine War Edition, Lagos. Let's talk. Today is the day that we let Nigeria rest because it's a Friday after all. We take on the biggest stories from around the world. There's no bigger story than the war in Ukraine. Russia finally invaded its western neighbor after weeks of military buildup on the border. Now we're spending the rest of the hour talking about the who, the what, the why, the how, and what next. Like I said, I've got two guests in the studio with me. Both of them are friends of the show. We have both of them also experts in international relations and history. My first guest is the founder of SBM Intelligence, Cheta Wanze. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to have you on the show. You need to move that phone away. You need to move it away. It's going to keep interfering with my mic.
What phone?
My second guest, there's a phone. Isn't there a phone? Is there a device?
It's a tablet.
Move it away. It's interfering with my mic. My second guest is a product management executive in venture capital, Chief Andy Oboforibo. Welcome back to Hard Facts.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you so much for joining us. Lagos, we'll hear from you as well. What's your take on the invasion and the dispute? What about the response from NATO and the international community? What questions do you have? Men, call us on 0700 993 993 993, and women, call us on 01465 7190. Chief, let me start with you. First of all, what's your reaction to Russia actually invading? But before we even get to that, did you think we would get here? And now that we are here, what's your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that, this is a violation of international norms. The thing was, I was in two minds about it. Part of me was like, it's Putin and everything is on the table with Putin. Part of me was at the same time like, why now? So that was because after all, Putin has invaded, he took Crimea before in 2014. He invaded Georgia in 2008. So it's not shocking that he would do this. The timing was what I found quite surprising. But my reaction to it is, of course, this is one of those things where it's clear, at least ever since I guess this is just a sign that the international rules-based order is dead, because the rules-based order was simply based on a few notions, namely no preemptive wars, no invasion, no taking of other countries' territory, and this was what we hanged people at Nuremberg for. So here we go.
Here we go. Cheta, did you think we would get here? What do you think now that we are here?
To be honest, I was shocked. And the reason why I was shocked was Putin had Ukraine precisely where he wanted them.
Okay.
It didn't, escalating it did not make sense. So there are two clauses in the NATO charter that meant that no matter how much desire Ukraine expressed, they would not have been able to join NATO. The first one is that to join NATO, all 28 member countries must agree. Or if there's one dissension, you can't join. France and Germany, two of the biggest NATO members, were not going to agree. It was not going, there was no universe where it was going to happen. Then, before we even start talking of Turkey, in short, the only people that the Americans were guaranteed to have agree for Ukraine's accession were the UK, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Romania. Those were the only ones that were guaranteed. All the rest were iffy. So, on that ground, Ukraine wasn't going to join. This is even before we talk of the second one, which is there must be no part of your territory in dispute with another country, a non-NATO member. As in, it's also a clause. The fact that he could have afforded to have kept the Donbas region, Donetsk and Luhansk, in basically in perpetuity, in trouble, in this state of frozen conflict. On that alone, Ukraine would not have been able to join. So either one of these meant that Ukraine would not have been able to join. Then talk less of having the two together. So it's just although I try as much as possible not to talk extensively on social media about non-Nigerian affairs, because I get paid for that. But the few times that I talked about it, I was very sure there would be no invasion.
Yes, you and a lot of analysts actually kept saying that Putin was bluffing.
Let me trip you. There's a Medusa is a geopolitical analysis firm, an international one, and they interviewed 13 prominent geopolitical analysts.
And they all said it's not going to happen.
On Tuesday. On Tuesday. And all 13 said that Putin was doing brinksmanship. This is not going to happen. I mean, these are people that actually read they read the damn thing.
Now their work be their work.
So me, I'm an engineer that stumbled into this thing. You understand? They read it as in is what they've been doing since year one.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
And all 13 of them said, no, he's not going to invade. So when the thing actually started on Thursday, everybody was like,
What? So, Chief, how did so many people get it so wrong for so long?
I think it comes down to one, assuming. Let me restart. It's one thing. If it comes from not listening to Putin. let's just be clear. Okay. It comes from not listening to Putin. Putin himself has been saying what he wants to do in one way or the other. That's why.
Can I interrupt?
No.
And that's why. Okay, so like Cheta really clearly explained why Ukraine couldn't join NATO, and so which is why it made no sense for Russia to invade. But that's based on the assumption that Ukraine joining NATO is the only reason why Putin would want to invade. Putin doesn't believe Ukraine should exist. Let's start there.
Okay.
Putin believes NATO is his missing rib. I'm sorry, Ukraine is his missing rib.
What a way to put it.
You heard that his speech now, and he's talking about Brest-Litovsk Treaty of 1917, talking about how Lenin basically made an error in creating Ukraine, even though that's a bit historical. Ukraine existed before it was absorbed. That is, Ukraine as an entity existed before the Russian Revolution. But yes, the republic was created by Lenin in quotes. So, but you see, he has always had these twin arguments. That one, that they shouldn't join NATO. Two, they shouldn't even exist. They should be part of Russia. So now the question now becomes, Ukraine can't join NATO. That means Ukraine cannot enjoy Article 5, an attack on one, it's an attack on all.
Right.
That means if NATO wants to defend Ukraine from a Russian invasion, NATO is, without being prompted or without being obliged to do so, is taking on the risk of a direct war with Russia, which of course carries the risk of a nuclear war. And that means NATO just joined a gamble at risk of destroying themselves and Russia, that they didn't need to join. Obama said something very clarifying about this. Obama said,
I read his statement, yeah.
I didn't read it.
It's a recent statement.
Yes.
I mean years back.
Okay.
Years back.
Okay.
Obama said,
The one of years back.
anybody in Washington who claims that America would go out to defend Ukraine is lying or joking or doesn't understand, because there's something that Russia has in the Ukraine scenario that America and NATO don't have, which is escalation dominance, which simply means that Russia is ready to die on the line to conquer Ukraine, or rather Putin is, right?
No, Russia is, because
Yes.
it's a geopolitical reality. So
Sure.
one of the things that I always do, again, since I got into geopolitics, it's one of
Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. Let me finish hearing from Chief.
Okay.
So with escalation dominance, Russia is ready at any point to die on the line to do what it takes to take Ukraine. That's how important taking Ukraine is to Russia. Is Ukraine, or the existence of Ukraine, or the life of Ukraine, as important to NATO and to the US to the extent that they are willing to get into a nuclear war over it? And the answer is simply no, because Ukraine is not their member. So as long as that's the case,
it's not even about whether it's their
it will
member.
be a game of chicken, and NATO will always blink first.
Let me come to Cheta.
It's not only about whether it's their member. So you see a lot of narratives about trying to understand Russia's position. And it's a brutal fact. There are some things called geopolitical realities. So you look at a map. Now, Russia is the largest country in the world. 11 time zones. Let's start with first the economics, because a lot of the arguments that Western powers make is hinged on economics, which personally for me is flawed, because not everybody thinks in terms of economics. You have to understand the way other people think. But let's start with the economics. As large as Russia is, they have only one region where they have all year warm water ports. Their most profitable port potentially could be Vladivostok in the Russian Far East, because that's the port that gives them access to the world's busiest trading zone, which is the South China Sea. But the port at Vladivostok is frozen half the year. There are other big ports, for example, Archangel, St. Petersburg, are also frozen half the year. And I have been to Russia in winter, so I can tell you that, man, they are cold, no be here.
Ask Napoleon.
Ask Hitler. Exactly. The other ports that are warm all year round happen to be in a little place called Crimea, or happen to be in and around a little place called Crimea. When the Soviet Union was being dissolved, and this is, for the record, Russia has fought a number of wars over Crimea, the most famous of them being the Crimean War of 1856 with Britain, with an alliance of Britain and France and Turkey. So, as in, for them, it is that important. So, when the Soviet Union was collapsing in 1991, and I think it's also important to put the fact that Crimea was part of the Russian Soviet Federalist Republic up until 1956, when Khrushchev handed it over to Ukraine for administrative convenience. So when the Soviet Union was collapsing, the Soviet Federalist Republics were going all their own. And for the Russians, it was important. So they had already foreseen a potential future where they might have a conflict with Ukraine and that port. So they actually had an agreement and had a lease with Ukraine for that port for 25 years. Agreement signed in 1991. 25 years ended in 2014. And suddenly, as 2014 was approaching, Ukrainians started talking about joining the EU and joining NATO and all of that. To Russian ears, no matter how you cut it, to Russian ears, and this is not Putin now, I can assure you that if Alexei Navalny becomes president of Russia tomorrow, he will behave exactly the same way.
But Navalny just condemned the invasion, by the way.
He will condemn it, of course. No, of course, he will condemn it. But by time, again, some of these geopolitical realities, it doesn't matter who is in the Kremlin. What matters is the geopolitical realities.
And I think that's one of the things that the West got wrong, especially the US. I think from the moment towards the end of the Clinton's second term, going into Bush, there was this belief or idea that the Cold War was done and dusted. Not just that the Cold War was over, but the new order was sufficiently stable that there was
wrote the end of history.
So there was really no more any need to pacify Russia, because immediately after the Cold War, when the Soviet Union was unbundling, I don't know what to call it,
when everywhere they scatter like that.
George Bush Senior, the Bush with sense, realized that, look, we still have a nuclear nation to worry about. It doesn't matter that the empire has crumbled. They still have enough nukes to wipe out half the world, and we have the other half. So let's make sure that they are satisfied, they are happy. So you had all these, some of the treaties that existed before the end of the Cold War, he kept them. The Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, basically, which means we will not create any defense to your nukes. So you can nuke us and we can nuke you. That keeps everybody respectful of each other, right? So because if now I have defense, and I know you can't do anything to me, I can do and undo. So that was a gesture to Russia to show that we're with you. There was also these agreements, most of them tacit, that look, NATO will expand, but NATO will not come all the way to your backyard. we are going to respect your sphere of influence, because at the end of the day, the closer I am to you, the more dangerous I am to you, because the harder it is for you to stop an attack from me. So the idea of a Ukraine being a member of NATO, meaning now there is a potentially hostile alliance right next door, was never going to be acceptable to Russia.
Before you say that, we have a break coming up and we need to take it. If you just tuned into the show, today is Friday. That's why we're talking global politics. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. And from 3 to 4 p.m. every Friday, we take a look at global stories. And the biggest story in the globe is Russia invading Ukraine. If you're watching our live stream, you're seeing footage after footage after footage of the invasion, of Russians themselves who are in Russia protesting the invasion, of the police in Russia arresting the protesters. At least 1,000 of them have been detained. I mean, these are people who are going out to protest knowing the consequences of doing that. And a lot of them have been detained. There are protests that will surely erupt all around the world. We have NATO nations imposing sanctions, but they have ruled out military intervention. We're going to talk about that when we come back from the break. We'll also talk about if this could have been prevented. Could this have been prevented? That's a question I have on my mind. It's a question my guests will answer. I've got Chief Andy Oboforibo on the show with me. I've got Chetawanze on the show with me. He's the founder of SBM Intelligence. Chief Oboforibo is a product management executive in venture capital. This is Hard Facts. Like I said, we'll be right back. Ezekwesili, we're on Nigeria Info 99.3. We're taking a look at the biggest story in the world right now. Russia invaded Ukraine. They are actually at war at the moment. Lagos, join the conversation. 0700-993-993-993. What do you think about the points that the gentlemen in the studio have been making? 01465-7190 for women. For men, 0700-993-993-993. We've got WhatsApp. WhatsApp is 080-959-75805. 99.3, hello.
Good afternoon, Sandra.
Good afternoon, sir. What's your name?
My name is David from Ibeshoriade.
David, welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, from the analysis of your analyst, why are people... Ukraine have not joined NATO.
Okay.
So why are you crucifying them for that? If you want to go to court today, there's no evidence to show that they have joined NATO. Then I want your analyst to answer the question you asked that is nuclear powers, they cannot be checked. Why?
Okay, they will answer it in a bit. Let's take a few more calls. 99.3, hello.
Hello, Sandra.
Thanks for calling. What's your name? Good afternoon.
My name is Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, welcome. Go ahead.
I want to ask a specific question. Does it worth it for Russia invading Ukraine? That's one. Secondly, is it not setting a bad precedent? Because some people keep saying, oh, U.S. invaded Iraq, U.S. invaded this and that. Should we leave these invaders alone? Or they should be taught a lesson? Because I just said a day is going to come, Putin will just sleep and wake up and invade another country. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling. So, first question, are nuclear powers uncheckable? So, Chief talked before the break, so I'll come to you, Cheta.
So yeah, that was David's question. The brutal fact is yes. See,
you agree, Chief? Yes.
Yeah, who's going to check them? You saw what your Minister of Foreign Affairs did today. They asked him, yes, sir, Professor Yama, what do you feel about the Russia and Ukraine? The man laughed and ran from there because who wants to talk?
It's this simple. At the end of the day, and I think this is one disservice, if I'm to use it, that American propaganda, which is called Hollywood, has done to us over the last 70 to 80 years.
Okay.
They've sold us this impression that the world is about good guys and bad guys, and that they're good guys to save the day, and that it's all about morality, blah blah black sheep. The brutal fact is that international geopolitics is not about morality, it's about interests. The Americans themselves have done nasty stuff to protect their interests. India, which is a serious country in ways that Nigeria is not serious, is already looking for ways to sign a deal with Russia after the sanctions were announced. India is looking for ways to sign a deal with Russia so that the Indian system will to pay for Russian fertilizer in rupees and not dollars. Because, of course, Russia has been cut off from the American financial system. Do you know why India is doing that?
Why?
Because the agricultural sector in India is large. It is the one sector, not IT, that India is famous for, but agric. It's the agricultural sector that is capable of bringing the upheaval that can overthrow India's government. Guess where the biggest, where their biggest source of fertilizer?
Where?
Russia.
Okay.
So they must buy Russian fertilizer. So they will deal with Russia, whether America says so or not. Interesting thing. Listen to the list of sanctions that were rolled out by the US, the UK, the EU, everybody. None of them targeted Russia's energy supply, as in the supply of energy from Russia into their countries.
That's right.
In fact, European nations, EU nations, just they are finalizing a purchase order for more Russian gas.
What you're doing is bad. Give us your gas.
I bet we need you know why?
Your station, though.
You know why? Because nobody wants their people going out into the forest to use axe to cut tree.
To burn firewood.
To burn firewood.
But
because that will cause trouble in their country.
I have to ask you, Chief, what's your take on NATO nations imposing sanctions, but they've ruled out military intervention?
Well, that one went without saying. Like I was saying before the break, as Obama clearly spelled it out. The Ukraine is not enough of a NATO interest for NATO to go and get into a war with Russia over. Nobody, there's no country outside of NATO that is enough of a NATO interest that NATO will go to war with Russia over them. You heard Biden's speech yesterday. Biden said
very clear.
Yes, he just said, look, we're not going in. We're not sending any soldiers there. All our soldiers are just going to other NATO countries. And I want to remind all my NATO allies, an attack on one is an attack on all. So he's telling all of them, if Russia does this to you, we're coming out. But this is not us, no be our business.
So this is a great campaign to join NATO.
It's a great way. I think many people will now rewrite the application, edit their CV to go and join. But to the question of are the great powers or superpowers, nuclear powers, or uncheckable? Yeah, they're uncheckable. Now, the question of morality and interest, I agree with Cheta. At the same time, I will say that, and this is where the rest of the world has failed in its own responsibilities towards itself.
Okay.
Because the rest of the world that are not nuclear powers had a vested interest for the last, let me say, 80 years, 70 years, to develop you can say, strengthen the rules-based order in a way.
They couldn't.
No, but at the end of the day, if you think
know why
about,
they couldn't?
If you think about all the wasted opportunities for economic growth that everybody from Nigeria to Brazil to India have led.
When you're calling nations, don't call Nigeria.
Please,
Nigeria was a nation once.
We still are a nation.
So at that point, you realize that if these guys had gotten their act together, because the only thing, unless you want to go and nuke, you can't fight a nuclear power,
right.
But you can cut them off the way NATO is doing with these sanctions if you're serious. But if you think about it, because of the way the global economic system is so intertwined and the dependence in all directions, it becomes very difficult to do that, especially for nations that are basically living on their knees and are begging.
Cheta, do you agree with the caller who says, doesn't this set a bad precedent?
So precedent is a legalistic term that you use when it is, that's Emmanuel, this is the name of the caller. Precedent is a legalistic term that you use when the law can be enforced.
When there's a court and the police,
when the law can be enforced.
Because China is already,
when the law cannot be enforced. So I'll give an example. America invaded Afghanistan. Justifiably, the only time in NATO history that Article 5 has been invoked was when the Taliban attacked, when Al-Qaeda attacked New York.
Yes.
And they were harbored by the Taliban. So that was justifiable. Even Putin went to New York to solidarize with the Americans, whatever language that is. But American soldiers committed human rights violations in both Afghanistan and then in the illegal invasion of Iraq.
Yes.
When the International Criminal Court wanted to pursue those American soldiers, America simply refused visas to all the International Criminal Court judges. They couldn't enter America. That is powerful nation behavior. China will do the same. In short, China doesn't have extradition treaties with any country. Once a Chinese guy comes here and commits, all he has to do is get back to China. And you will shout and shout from now till tomorrow. China will not extradite him. So there's a way powerful nations behave. So it speaks to Andy's points that basically one of the places where we yabbed was we missed the boat in terms of becoming powerful. And Nigeria's own is particularly painful because we are the one African country that was in a position
to actually
become a great power. We didn't get off the train. We hopped off the train with springs. But again, that's a completely different discussion.
Thank you.
The discussion is precedent. Precedent is only used when it's small nations in the discussion.
Could this have been prevented?
This could. So let me put it this way. If this should have been foreseen. Let me put it that way.
It was foreseen, actually.
But NATO never acted like this was going to be a scenario that they had to deal with. So what I mean by that is, from the moment Putin became president, New Year's Eve going into 2000, right? That's when Yeltsin made the announcement. From the moment, Putin he didn't hide where he was going. Meanwhile, the whole time, Bush took over about a year later, Bush revoked the ABM treaty, Bush approved expansion of NATO. So basically Bush was telling Putin all the time, do your worst, right? And Putin was planning for doing his worst.
Now
was NATO doing the same? So right now, as Cheta pointed out, NATO can't put energy sanctions because NATO nations in Europe are dependent on Russian gas. So what were they doing the last 20 years to plan for the day when they may have to fight Putin and he will cut their gas supply? Nothing. The UK is being mealy-mouthed about sanctions because Russian money, illegal Russian oligarch money, laundered through the city of London, keeps afloat most critical British business sectors, including real estate, financial services, and so forth. So very strong sanctions will bring down the British economy. Belgium has refused to allow SWIFT, the international settlements institution.
Belgium, Germany, and Italy
have
all refused to vote against
out of SWIFT. Now, if you are planning, meanwhile, compare that with Russia. Now, after the last sanctions in 2014, after Putin they went to prepare. They saw that this one can cut us out of the financial system. Here's what we're going to do: we'll be diverting from dollar-based and euro-based treasury bills and other securities, start buying yuan-based ones. You see, they were planning for the day when the West would do them strong thing. The West was not planning for the day that Russia would do these people like Ukraine.
So the West was cocky.
And then while doing that, they were still giving assurances to Ukraine. See, that's the part that is also criminal, by the way, in this. Because if you're not going to defend somebody, then let them know that they're on their own, and let them know it quickly. Then let Ukraine know how they will make their peace. In all of these, the greatest victims who we should not lose sight on are the people in the Ukraine. Because there are a lot of people there who are dying right now because, on the one hand, they have a tyrannical, villainous, Hitlerian power ready to wipe them out, and on the other hand, they have a cowardly Chamberlainian power that's going to let it happen.
And some of the people in Ukraine, hold on. So some of the people in Ukraine right now who could be dying are Nigerians.
Yes.
Ukraine has a large number of Nigerian students. We're hearing that the Nigerian students are not being allowed into neighboring countries like Poland. Some of them have trekked for long hours getting to Poland and have not been allowed in because they're not Ukrainian.
Because they are black. Let's just put it bluntly.
Yes, because they are black. It's racism, we know.
And the Nigerian government did not do a lot to get our people out of there. Yeah. And now they're saying, we're going to get flights in there to get them out. But the airspaces are closed. So, I mean, how do we get our people out? How do we save our people? Can we save our people?
Meanwhile, China has told its people that are still in the Ukraine, just fly a Chinese flag and no harm will come to you. But I think
because I mean the place that Putin went to, the timing of this thing.
Yes,
Putin could have invaded weeks ago. Yes, he was ready weeks ago, but he actually went to China because right now a lot of Russia's economy is dependent on China. For example, if Russia switches off the gas to Europe, they already have a market in China for it. Zz's had a vanity project, the Winter Olympics. So Z was the one who actually told him something.
Please cool down, please. After the figure skating,
after the Olympics finishes, it's a fact. The Olympics finished on Sunday,
right?
Just Sunday here,
right?
As in, it was Sunday the Olympics finished. It was Monday Putin called cabinet meeting.
Right.
It was Tuesday that he recognized the Luhansk and Donetsk.
Right.
And then Wednesday troops don't enter.
Right.
As in, it's the script. The man plans for his interests. So the Chinese can issue that statement, just fly Chinese flag, because they can issue it in the full confidence that once the Russians see a Chinese flag, they won't attack them.
And but what happens to the Nigerians?
And that's
back to my question, Cheta. Silence. Let's pick calls. Lagos is calling. Let's talk to Lagos. 99.3. Hello. Sorry about that. Call back if you can. We've got Azu Frank calling us. Where are you calling us from, Azu?
I'm calling from Jakarta, Indonesia.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Sandra, I beg, I want to ask one question. What do you concern us about Ukraine and Russia?
What's our business?
Our business. I have a friend. His slogan is concern your concern.
Okay.
Face you.
Okay.
Look, I'm in Indonesia. Indonesia is about 22 hours flight from Nigeria. Ukraine is about 26 hours flight. What are we talking about? Look, I'm so upset and I've been having a very funny weekend. I'm going through my phone, social media, Ukraine, Russia, our brothers in DRC, 5 million people are dying of war. Nobody's texting or tweeting about it. Tigray, or whatever you call it, Ethiopia, 5,000 people in just in less than a 2 years war. 5,000 people have died there. This Ukraine, whatever, that have been happening for less than 3 days. Less than 15 people have died. Nigerians are busy tweeting, Instagram, everything about Ukraine that you cannot even pronounce the president's name because of language barrier. It's very, very far from us.
So you're saying it's not our concern, so why would they consign us?
You have experts in the building there. Ask them. The only way it can affect, in fact, man, no lie, I don't want to sound insensitive yet. The only concern is say, thank God oil prices have gone up, but I didn't get anything to lie again. We will make money. The only thing, I just want to be a human here. Yeah, the worst that can happen is they do the nuclear thing according to your topic. It's going to be what they call MAD. The experts will tell you mutual assured destruction. It will affect them, it will affect us, it will affect everybody. And they won't do it.
All right, Azu. Thanks for calling. Let's ask our guests whether it consign us. I'll start with Cheta. Cheta, you get 2 minutes to answer. Then I'll come to Chief. Chief, you get 2 minutes to answer. Does it concern us?
In one word, yes.
How?
Okay, let's start with this. Bread is a common staple in Nigeria. A lot of Nigerians eat bread. The two biggest suppliers of wheat are Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine especially. Take out that supply because of a war, and the price of wheat goes up, which means that the price of bread goes up. Azul rightly pointed to the price of oil.
But we've banned importation of wheat anyway.
As I was saying. rightly pointed to the price of oil, which yesterday hit $105. Now, many Nigerians think, oh, we go make money. Yes, Nigeria will make money on paper. But number one, it's election season in Nigeria. We have these habits, and old habits die hard. We have this habit of throwing money away during election season, one. But more importantly, we have this little thing called subsidy. And subsidy, it has been proven beyond all reasonable doubt that the subsidy does not really affect things like the price of transport, which ultimately affects the price of food and inflation. So we are going to end up spending more money on subsidy as the prices of oil goes up. There has been a like-for-like correlation between subsidy and price of oil for the past 10 years, thereabouts. So we're going to spend more on subsidy. In an economy where our debt to revenue ratio is already like 90-something%
in a campaign year.
Omo, we are going to pay for this in 4 years' time.
Your 2 minutes is done, Chief.
It's funny that Azu is saying this when he himself, okay, imagine if now Russia or China was attacking Indonesia and another Azu in Ukraine were to call in and say, waiting concern us, concern waiting concern you, face waiting face you. Nigerians are everywhere. Our greatest export in this country is Nigerians. So, anything, so we just mentioned right before Azu called, you just mentioned the scores of Nigerians, hundreds, maybe we don't even know or more, who are right now stranded, walking across. At the very least, we should be talking about the fact that this is affecting actual Nigerians. And it brings me to the point I was going to make before the calls. Something that's always running in my mind when time, like we have things like the what they call it, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa and all of this. I always ask the question: what is the cost of a Nigerian life? What I mean by that is, part of a government's job is to make every hostile person, every hostile government and non-state actor anywhere in the world feel like if I take one life from that country, it will cost me XYZ. And that XYZ is too high for me to pay, so make I leave their people. I don't need that problem. But right now, there is zero cost to the life of a Nigerian anywhere in the world. And we're seeing it right now in live in 3D in the way our government has treated the Nigerians who, for no fault of their own, are now stuck in a war zone. So if that in itself does not mean that we should be concerned about Ukraine because we're just being our brother's keeper as Nigerians, and I don't know what else to say.
Okay, let me remind you, Lagos, there's a treasure hunt going on right now. To join the hunt, head over to the Nigeria Info app and search anywhere for the treasure. The treasure that you are searching for is a picture of the Nigeria Info logo. If you like that picture, if you click on that picture once you find it, fill in your details correctly and submit. The first person who does it wins 5,000 naira. So go. First step, download the app. Second step, find the logo. It's happening right now. We're going to announce the winner by the end of the show. 99.3, hello.
Yes, Sandra Ezekwesili.
Thanks for calling. I greet you too. What's your name, sir?
And I greet the guest. My name is Kelvin, reaching from Sugar.
Kevin, my good friend. Welcome.
Yes, I find it offensive and annoying for a Nigerian to call that it does not concern us. Apart from the issue of our Nigerian brothers that are there, how about the proliferation of light weapons and all that? That was what happened in Libya. They said it did not concern us. Later, all those weapons found their way in Nigeria that is being used by the terrorists. So I think it's offensive and annoying for a Nigerian to call and say it does not concern us. But having said that, I think Chipobo, I wanted to listen to you very well to address the issue of checkmating the ammunition that these world powers have. Because Russia has created this hypersonic missile, which they said if they launch it, nobody sees it in the radar once it gets to where it's going to go and do the damage. And America has done all their detective devices. They cannot detect it. And they also have it. They have just built their own. China also has it. Other countries are building their own now. So who is going to check it? I don't think anybody, even the atomic agency that checked Iraq and told the world that Hassan Hussein does not have atomic energy, and yet America invaded. I don't think they can check it. So I want you to address that again because you didn't address it very well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief.
Yeah, so I'll say, so there's really no way. I have a parable, the parable of Muammar Gaddafi. Gaddafi has been a thorn in the side of the Americans, and they were a thorn in his side in the 80s. I think as a child, one of my first memories was Reagan bombing Gaddafi, right? But the whole time, the Americans felt he had weapons of mass destruction program. So even though they sanctioned him and he was bombing, Panama, and all, they more or less left Gaddafi alone. Sanctions and everything. They just, in day, way in day. after the invasion of Iraq, the illegal one, right, and the toppling of Saddam Hussein, something happened to Gaddafi, and he decided, look, I don't want these Americans' problems. And he came out and he said, you know what, I'm ending my weapons of mass destruction program.
Yeah.
Within less than a decade, Gaddafi was gone. Right? Now, I'm not saying this, I'm not a fan of Gaddafi, by the way, so this is not in praise of Gaddafi. I'm just pointing out what happens in a world where you don't have nukes or the position to build nukes. Look at the Kims in North Korea, right? They are there. Half their population is starving. It's ridiculous. Like, they're mismanaging their economy. But nobody is touching them because they have enough nukes to wipe out South Korea, Japan, and make it a mess. So it's like, well, made and day, where then day, right?
And that is the lesson that will come out of this.
That's right.
Ukraine had nuclear weapons
and gave them away
to Russia.
Oh. Yes,
yeah,
because
the Americans promised them that, okay, give your nuclear weapons to the Russians and we will give you an umbrella. Now that the umbrella is needed, the Americans are nowhere to be found except to give sanctions. And it's not about sanctions, is this. The more you use a tool and it is shown that it is ineffective, more people will look at that tool and say, is this
it's like flogging in secondary school.
I'm not comfortable with that, because you have, African dictators looking at it.
Sani Abacha, we lived through that.
Yes.
They sanctions
him.
Didn't we suffered. And if not for God, he will still be president by now.
Some say it's an Indian woman.
God walks through people, so maybe God walks through an Indian woman. The point is this, because I need to answer that point.
We're running out of time, so very quickly.
Basically, we've gone back into a brave new world of might is right. So I will quote Athens. Is it Denothezis or whatever?
Thucydides.
Basically, the strong do what they will. And the weak suffer what they must.
MI from Akoka says, I agree with Chata totally. The world is not black and white. When it comes to global politics, onye ji nuclear ka onye kanyi geso. That means that whoever has nuclear is who will follow.
Is the MI that is tweeting in Igbo?
Yes.
No, not MI, Nigerian info MI.
No, I know, but no, the MI from Akoka na guy now.
I don't know. He speaks Igbo quite a lot. He says the hypocrisy of the West stinks. Acting as the moral police of the globe, yet choosing gas supply over human rights. Unfortunately, some people are being caught in the crossfire. Putin is just taking a leaf from the Joseph Stalin book. MI, thanks for your message. Ladi from Ikorodu says, I'm not in support of Russian invasion of Ukraine. However, I think the U.S. is being hypocritical. Have you forgotten how the U.S. resisted vehemently and successfully the building of missiles in Cuba in the 1960s during the reign of J.F. Kennedy? More people with messages here. Gatti Nations from Babcock says, Sandra, it's a pity we are always in a state of confusion in these parts of the world. What would it take Nigeria as a sovereign country to evacuate her citizens from a war zone? It's a pity we just have leaders that are selfish. No wonder someone is promising to fight dirty. Well, I advise he goes to Ukraine. Oh, Gatti Nations, thanks for sending a message in. But what I will say, though, is, well, Nigeria really bungled this one because we saw signs very early.
Yes.
But Nigerians said to her citizens, stay calm, remain calm, don't go to unsafe areas, etc., etc. And they kept doing that until Ukraine locked her airspace. And Ukraine locking her airspace means that, you have very limited options about how exactly you can evacuate your citizens. The House of Assembly has said that they will put it upon themselves to personally champion the evacuation.
But how? Who does them there?
How are you going to do it? Let me go back to more messages that we have. I love the analysis of your guests. Samuel Adesino says from Victoria Island, the US and their allies have been writing scripts which portray them as the saints. I love what Russia is doing.
So you love that Russia is invading a sovereign nation, killing people.
What we need to learn as a people is our interest. The ultimate worry for me here is, as imperfect as the West has been over the last 40 years since the fall of the Soviet Union,
right?
Last 30 years plus since the fall of the Soviet Union, they have sponsored and put pressure on African leaders to behave better. Now that we are going back into great power competition, they will look for and sponsor strong men here who are friendly to them. So all this talk about democracy and human rights in the next 10 years in this part of the world will die.
That's it.
We're on our own.
That's what always surprises me by people who support Russia and China in this kind of situation. Russia and China don't care whether your president orders people to shoot you when you go out to protest. All they want is stability. It's the West that has even tried to give you some sanctions and things like that to help
as
you.
bad as they
are. As bad as they are. So when you look at this and you're instead, because maybe you don't like Biden or you like Trump,
will cut you off.
Well, I think we should just have to learn our lessons.
Okay, we'll take a break. We have like 3 minutes when we come back from the break. It's really short, I know, but it's a rolling story, and we're going to stay on it for a while. We have 2 minutes. Don't worry, we'll come back.
Women are half the population, but own less than 40% of businesses. Not on my watch. It's time for the second annual Glass Ceiling Convention, live on Sunday, March 6th at 4 p.m. on 99.3 Nigeria Info FM. This year, it's business. Our theme is Break the Boardroom. Nigeria.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili. Today on the show, we did a big one because there's no story bigger than Russia invading the Ukraine. I've got Chifandi Oboforibo on the show with me. He is a product management executive with a venture capital firm. We also have the founder of SBM Intelligence, Chetan Wanze. They've been my guests. They've been brilliant. They are experts in this on this subject. Now, I'm going to give them 30 seconds each to give me their final thoughts on this, and hopefully I will have them back in the studio to talk about this again. I'll start with you, Chief. I'll come to Cheta. Chief, 30 seconds.
While the West was negligent and in a way opened the door in all of this, the true war criminal here is Vladimir Putin and the Russian state. And if there were justice in the world, Vladimir Putin would end his days in a prison cell in The Hague next to George W. Bush. But there is no justice in the world, only might making right. And what is happening to the Ukraine now should be a signal to every small country in the world. Find whatever leverage you can to protect yourself and protect your citizens.
Cheta?
Building on what Andy has said, because he stole some of my thoughts. It's important for countries like Nigeria, African countries. We are relatively insulated for now because in the scheme of global geopolitics, we don't matter at this point. But nevertheless, as time goes on, we will become the center of great power competition once again. It's important for us at home to strengthen our civic societies, because we will go back into the dark days of dictatorships once that competition starts.
Ooh, all right, let's leave it at that. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We hope we can bring you back into the studio. All our best to Nigerians who are currently stuck in the Ukraine. Up next is Public Square with Agogo Obo. When he's done, music and moments with Ifeanyi and Sam. I'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about the implications of this bill that the president has assented to on the big weekend. And on the big hard fact, we'll take a look at the House of Reps wanting to denationalize power transmission, supply, etc., etc. I'll have guests in the studio with me. I'm Sandra Ezekwesili on social media. Those were your hard facts, Lagos. Good night.
It's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.